Hey, talkie internet thingy. Yeah, could you find me a voiceover podcast that has more than one person on it? It's not boring and, it's.
There's a lot of VO podcasts out there, sharing a lot of insight and knowledge. But on another VO podcast, you get to hear from three guys who are accountability partners and who all have a different story of how their VO careers came together. Do they have all the answers? Probably not. But between the three of them, they've made all the mistakes you don't want to make. And hey, they're really nice guys. Well, pretty much. Here's Jake, Alden, and Troy with another VO podcast.
Welcome back to another VO podcast. We are continuing this run of guests and interviews. So happy today to have an industry leader with us, someone that has done so much for the industry, his kindness, his openness, all the things he does. We want to welcome J. Michael Collins. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
It's my absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And I know I said right before we went on, we're going to try not to be mundane, but sometimes it's hard not to hit some of those same questions.
Bar for me, yeah.
And I found on the other podcast I did like 130 episodes. And by the time you get to about 25, you're out of subjects. And if you're not interviewing people, you better be coming up with some weird things or current events going on or whatever. So it's hard.
We get weird. It's cool.
It's hard. It's hard. So JMC, traveling all the time, doing workshops, sharing experiences, conferences, and working in voiceover. One of the things I wanted to bring up first out of the chute, conferences seem to be, over the last couple of years, really growing. More people wanting to go, more people realizing the value of attending. Mm-hmm. And in your opinion, what's one of the number one expectations you should have when you come to a conference?
Well, I think that, conferences serve a couple of different purposes, and I love that there's so many of them out there that have different shapes and sizes and flavors and themes these days. And I think that the conference organizers, including ourselves, are getting better and better at differentiating lineups so that you don't have the same experience every time you go to a different conference. In terms of expectations, I think it's twofold. I think, first is obviously the content is there for a reason. And if the curator of the conference has done a good job, then the content ought to have the value that is, synonymous with the price of the ticket, and you should be getting what you pay for there, just in terms of learning and growing. Different conferences are targeted towards different segments of the industry. You've got some that are really targeted towards working pros. You've got some that are really targeted at the business of the business, like Karin's Vocation conferences. You've got some like VO Atlanta that are a catch-all that we have content for everybody from brand new aspiring VOs to people who are six-figure earners and beyond. So they're all a little bit different, but the content's number one. Number two, and I don't think this gets talked about enough. And here's one of the dirty little secret things that I like to tell people with conferences is that when you go and you pass out your business card and you get in front of all those casting directors and agents and managers and everybody else. Look, people know I hire talent sometimes, so I get 500 business cards at a conference too. Guess what? They stay in the room when I leave. And for the CDs and the agents and the managers, it's the same. They're not taking those home and putting them in a Rolodex. Now, if you stand out in one of their sessions, you do have those stories of a handful of people getting signed off at the back of each conference, right? But for the most part, the contacts that you make, the relationships that you make at conferences that are going to be really valuable are your fellow talent. And it's the ones that you break bread with. It's the ones that you go do karaoke with. It's the ones that you just spend time getting to know, because even though I agree with the broad philosophy of don't market to your fellow talent in general, doesn't mean that your wide circle of friends will not impact your bottom line. We hire each other all the time, okay? And the more friends you have in this business, the more work you're going to book. And so the more people you get to know in real life, I always tell, I hire coaching students and demo students, but I usually tell them, hey, if I just know you over Zoom, I'm probably not going to hire you. It's usually somebody I've broken bread with, somebody I've had a laugh with, had a beer with, whatever, that, eventually, look at some of my best friends, not just in VO, but in life now. I'm going to another hockey game with Patrick Kirchner tonight. Patrick was one of my students 6 or 7 years ago. Brad Highland was one of my students, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And now they're my boys. We go to games, we hang out, and guess what? I throw them jobs, right?
Yeah.
And they throw me jobs from time to time. So, make friends in this business, because that to me, that's the big value, the secret value in the conference, is that you find your tribe and the circle that you wind up kind of thriving together with.
Yeah.
And somehow we answered the next question, and this is verbatim. Do you feel association is a part of this industry many people don't work at?
Right.
And we do. There are a lot of people that don't work at that association with other people, and you really should. I know my first year down, I was a fly on the wall. I needed to learn the conference, understand the people. I learned really quickly how approachable everyone was and began to make conversation with people. But year 2, I made a really big effort to get up and shake hands with people, talk to people, have a drink with people, and it made a big difference. I mean, that made this past year totally different for me in my career.
Well, I mean, I think people now, Troy Holden, you say your name, we know who you are. You're visible. You're somebody who's out there. We met you. We know you, right? And you're, you're one of us now.
Oh boy.
You have been assimilated.
Yeah. So let's talk about just subtle differences. Jake, you were a volunteer at One Voice.
Yeah.
I've been to VO Atlanta twice, ready to go for the third time. Let's talk a little bit about the differences. Jake, jump in and tell us, your experience at One Voice and what it meant to you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks again, Jay, for putting that out there, that whole volunteer possibility.
Absolutely.
And thanks for Troy for pointing it out. He said, hey, there's this going on, because I live less than an hour outside of Dallas, so I was just able to make that quick trek over there in the morning. But yeah, just getting to help out was great, because one, I was wearing a giant red shirt that said "Ask Me Questions," so everybody from fellow voice talent to agents and casting directors would ask me questions. And then I could, obviously offer services and whatnot, as far as I can tell you where the room is. I can walk you there. I can get you something to drink if you need it, kind of thing. And that alone already allowed me to just kind of show my prior VO experience, which was customer service. And I just feed into that. You know what I mean? Like I'm there ready to be helpful. But at the same time, I was able to pass out some cards. I was able to make connections, and some of those actually, grew into something after the fact. So that right there alone was worth it just to volunteer. And I like helping people out in general. You know what I mean? I want to pass on what I know or be available to those people if they need it. And so that's what I got out of it, was just being able to be helpful, but also being able to stand out as someone that people could come to for that help, and know they could trust me to do that.
Very cool.
Yeah, and the sports analogy I take away from it is VO Atlanta is like the Super Bowl, and One Voice is like one of the final playoff games.
Right.
It does.
I mean, they've grown now to where VO Atlanta is, by a country mile, the largest one. We had 1,000 attendees last year, and we're on track now, because we learned last year we can't do more than that at that venue. So we learned that. We had to shut off sales on the Friday last year. Our tracking right now has us selling out in early to mid-February. So it's obviously a conference of substantial size. And then One Voice has become the second biggest one over time. And now I think we did a little over 400 this year. And so that one continues to grow. They've all got their own vibes. They're all a little bit different, but there's not a bad conference out there. They're all worthwhile in their own way.
Sure.
So we have both of those coming up next year, early March, and then August. Do you have the set dates yet for both?
Yeah.
I know you do for Atlanta.
So VO Atlanta is the 7th through 10th of March. One Voice is the 8th through 12th of August. Let me just double check that so you don't catch me lying here.
That sounds right.
Let's see.
Right.
No fake news here. Let's see. August 2024. The 8th is the Thursday. Again, the core content, like normal, will be the 9th and the 10th, but the 8th through the 12th. And there's a reason that I can't reveal yet, that we're talking about the Monday being part of it also, but that may not impact everybody. But for the moment, that's 8th through 12th of August.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's exciting.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's flip over to demos for a second. We're always hearing about current trends, changes in demos and everything. Where are we today? I know Jake and I have both done demos with you, and really appreciate what that has done. The insight it has given me, and some of the follow up that you and I have done has just been it's been invaluable. But where are we now with trends as far as time and what's going on?
Well, it helps when you got guys like you who don't suck. So that's nice. But in terms of trends, the trends change based on the genre. Okay, so demos, the genre determines the content, the length, what's appropriate, what isn't. I think one of the trends we've seen recently that I personally like as a demo producer and an artist in this is that there was for a while this really vocal minority of people going, your demo has to be exactly 1 minute. And they were a very vocal minority, but they were always a minority. And I think that, I've heard casting directors, even Marilyn Wisner at one of the recent panels that she did was like, I think commercial demo might eventually be 4 30-second spots, be 2 minutes, because we've got buyers who want to hear you sustain the read. One of the really interesting things that came out of COVID was that there was more hiring being done off of demos. And one of the pieces of feedback that casting directors were getting was, we hired this person based on their demo samples, which sounded great, but they were all 7 seconds long, and they can't sustain a 30.
Wow.
Right. So now I don't think we're going to get to 4 30-second spots. I don't think it's going to be 2 minutes, but I do see now the sweet spot with commercial is, 115 to 130 or so. And,
Right.
And you can sneakily get away with a little bit longer if you want. Promo, same kind of neighborhood, 115, 130 is a decent ballpark. Trailer and most broadcast genres, TV narration documentary, you can sneak up towards 2 minutes. If you talk to Tom Pinto, he'll tell you 2 minutes is, sort of the limit with that. Political, same kind of thing, 90 seconds to 2 minutes, you're all right. Non-broadcast narration, again, 130 is often a sweet spot for a lot of different genres. I don't think there are any genres where you ever want to go over the 2 minute mark. That just starts to get a little bit too much, and being maybe a little bit shy of that in general is good. But, I think with also the fact that, especially on online platforms, individual samples are becoming more prominent. And I think there's become a little bit of a bifurcation where in the brick and mortar world of voiceover, the agents, the managers, casting directors, production companies, ad agencies, they still want the classic demo because they have their specific uses for that. It's about getting representation. It's about the client listening to the whole thing. They may be casting off of their site. They don't have the time to necessarily build out a site where they're breaking out millions of little samples. But on the pay-to-play sites and on other online casting forums, the individual samples are becoming more important now.
Right.
So you still want to have your master demo, but you then want to have your demo producer break that down into the individual cuts. And on top of that, if you can do more individual cuts, I've been remiss in that I've been working on a project now for about, it's something I should have done much faster, but as a demo producer, I still maintain a Voice123 account, and I'm trying to create 1,000 individual samples to put on my Voice123 account to match every possible read style that I can do off of all of the keywords that they have, so that basically I come up page one, number one on every search. And it's just a question of getting the time to do that, right? So it's a little bit of a change between the two different areas in terms of what's important. Cool thing is most demo producers will do individual spots for you for much less than a full demo. So if you want to do a specific sample for a pay-to-play, for instance, or just to flesh something out, that's usually a possibility.
Yeah. Great information.
I love that.
So you're the guy that is known for lobster, football, family time, and of course, voiceover. But let's go back to the simpler times when you came out of radio, went into VO. And I'm going to lead into here in a little bit the challenges of people starting up now versus 5 years ago versus 15 years ago. But what was one of the biggest obstacles you faced in becoming sustainable with just VO?
I think the interesting thing at that time was that it was a little easier to do it the old fashioned way. I mean, when I started with just one agent, and literally would physically go into studios, offices, whatever it may be, read for 5 to 10 jobs a week, book 1 or 2, and it was a living. Okay. And that wasn't, I played I had a 10 handicap at one point because I was playing 5 or 6 rounds a week. Right. It was not a bad way to live. I
Right.
wasn't making what I make now, but I was doing all right. And that's changed over the years. I think that the biggest obstacles back then were that while some people complain today about the saturation of coaches and training and other stuff that's out there, they weren't around 25, 30 years ago when that stuff wasn't there. Okay. I mean, there were maybe a couple of people in New York and a couple of people in LA, and that was it. And there was no online
Yeah.
stuff, right? So you sort of had to learn by osmosis. You kind of had to learn. You either came from an acting background, you came from a broadcast background, or you just self-taught. And that made it harder for a lot of people because you had to kind of figure it out as you went. Whereas today you do have all of this training, and yeah, it can be a little overwhelming. And yeah, there are a lot of people out there selling garbage, but at the same time, there are a lot of people out there who are teaching really, really good stuff. And the ability to have that access to sort of cut the lead time down in terms of growing as a talent and also understanding the business side, I think that's that's the part that makes it easier today. The part that makes it harder today is obviously anybody can put together a home studio, and there are more people trying to do it than ever. Although I will always say that the idea of the market being oversaturated with talent is a little bit of a mythology in the sense that there are probably 200,000 people in North America calling themselves professional voice actors, out of whom 10,000 are making any kind of a living doing this. And out of those 10,000, it's about 2,000 booking most of the work. So at the end of the day, if you've got the chops, the technical ability, and the drive as an entrepreneur in this business, you probably won't go hungry. Whether or not you get rich, most people don't, of course, and whether or not you make a really good living is going to be more of a function of who you are as a business person, who you are as a talent.
Right. Totally makes sense. And direct marketing right now seems to be the craze, seems to be key. And I'm sure that was a change because at one time, like you said, it was you had an agent or two and that's where it came from. But now direct marketing and even the teaching for that is a big deal. A lot of people teaching marketing and some good ones out there.
Yep, very much.
Okay, so I have to ask this question. You have a young man at home, Tom. I see a lot of VO folks that their young people are jumping into VO. I'll use Mark Ryder as an example. I watched a cool reel of him and Emerson doing a spot. Has Tom shown an interest yet?
Yeah, he's done a few spots.
Cool.
He's done some auditions. He actually got an award for a commercial he did a couple of years ago, which I was proud of. But we're at that stage where it's still kind of, hey, do you want to come up and help Daddy with something in the studio, as opposed to him, having a craving and active interest. Tom wants to be a YouTuber. Tom wants to be Mr. Beast.
There you go.
And so we'll nurture that because that'll help us retire a lot faster.
There you go.
But as he expresses more of an interest, we're happy to keep putting him on the mic if it's something that makes him happy. And I don't want to push him towards it. It's got to be something that he enjoys. But he has, a cool thing. He auditioned for a Huggies commercial at one point where he sang the Huggies song, right? And it's actually how I discovered he could sing. He's got perfect pitch.
That's awesome.
And it comes from Anna. It comes from his mom. I can't sing, and she doesn't sing, without being prompted because her family used to make her sing when she was younger, so she doesn't like to. But she sings like an angel. And Tom's got that perfect pitch, and he did the Huggies jingle, and I'm like, oh my God, wow, he can actually do this. So so he's having some fun with it, but it's not an everyday thing.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
neat. That's neat. I'm always curious if some of the kids have interest in that. Mine were grown and gone when I got into this. Mine had to grow up around horses, and I let them be exposed to the horses. Do you want to ride the horses? You don't have to ride the horses, but they're here.
Yeah,
and it was kind of that thing.
Tom is starting to understand money now, and I think the more he understands money, and if he starts to make a correlation between the two, he may get more interested.
There you go. There you go. That's true.
There's always
very
that
true.
switch.
Yeah. So there's a lot of newer VO people that are making a quote unquote living with a diverse set of clients and income streams. What do we see coming in the future forming or changing in the way talent is trying to structure where their work comes from? Because, direct marketing is king, I think, but will we see reductions in platforms? What do you kind of see coming in the next 10 years?
I'll actually disagree about direct marketing being king in that I like direct marketing. I'll call it queen at the moment. Not to, maybe that sounds sexist. I don't know.
Nah.
But the reason I'm going to say that something else is king is that search engine optimization has web visibility has changed my life. And what I mean by that, and I've written a blog about this, is that since the pandemic ended, I have found myself essentially in a position where I've kind of reverse engineered a 1990s, early 2000s voiceover career, in that because my site is attracting an average of just under 2 buyers per day walk in through my website, I am now, that frees me up to take these trips I take, to do these workshops I do, to take a week off from auditioning unless it's a really big thing, right?
Sure.
It frees me. I'm working from storefront studios more than I have at any point in the last 20 years because I'm just I'm able to go play and I'm on the road. One of the big national campaigns that I booked over the summer, the first session, I'm in Seattle. And I'm like, well, I'll just call up a studio and go in. And I banged out, a dozen spots and 50 tags or whatever, and it's 11:45 when we're done, and I'm thinking, what am I? Do I want to sit in here and bang out auditions the rest of the day? What I want to do to myself? No, the Mariners are playing at 1:00. I'm gonna go see a ball game, and and I couldn't, I couldn't do that even 6 or 7 years ago because at that point, even though I did have a strong website, I was getting maybe 2 jobs a week that would come in through my site, and now what's happening is that younger buyers who are under 40, this is the generation that hates the idea of a middleman. They hate the idea of paying rent. Okay. So they are largely, excuse me, they are largely not going back to the brick and mortar world of voiceover where there's somebody taking a percentage, but they're also not going to voices.com and Fiverr and other websites that are also taking 20%, right? They don't want to pay backsheesh. They don't want to pay the VIG to anybody, right? So what they're doing is they're simply doing web search, Google search. They're finding us directly and they're curating a small list of talent that they work with. And that has, on an average day, I think the metrics I was looking at, I get an average of about 20 unique visitors to my website. Out of, and most of them, interestingly, are LA and New York IP addresses, which means a lot of ad agencies and production companies, out of whom an average of about 1.8 buy a voiceover every single day. And usually these are clients that I don't really need to fight on rates with. The way my website, I don't have a rate card up there. I don't have prices. My website is designed to say, I'm not cheap. Okay. Right. So, if you walk in and you send me an email, there's already an assumed element of just the way I've structured my website, made it look that this guy's not going to be doing it for $100, right? So at the end of the day, that has changed my business a lot and allowed me a lot more freedom to not chase work compared to even just 5 or 6 years ago. So to me, that is right now the thing that a lot of talent should be focusing on, is building their web visibility. And the more specific your sound, the more specific the genres that you play in. It's easier to get ranked for political or medical or e-learning than it is for commercial or promo or whatever it may be, right? So the more likely it is that you're going to see traction on that. The more unique you sound, the more likely it is you're going to get traction based on certain keywords. But I'd be working with professionals on this to try to enhance your SEO. But yes, look, I love direct marketing. I think direct marketing is a very important part of anybody's mix. I really think people should be having as many revenue streams and sources of work as possible in voiceover, because, if one slows down, I always tell the story of how I was, a lot of people have been in the industry that long, don't know that I was one of the very, very early adopters of the pay-to-play sites, okay? And back in the day, back in 2006, 2007, people were like, hey, J. Michael, you're going to ruin your career and your reputation. Why are you going on these sites? And I'm like, I'm going on these sites because I'm printing money. They were back in those days, from about 2007 until about 2013 or 14, there were a couple of dozen of us who just went on there and ate. It was beautiful, okay? It was like shooting fish in a barrel. We made millions of dollars on those sites, over a period of years. And, I was an early adopter of that, but there came a point where probably about 2014, I started to see the writing on the wall with voices.com. And there was a point in time, if I go back to 2012, 2013, voices.com was probably a third of my income. Okay. And I started to go, And slowly but surely started weaning myself off of that to when I had to leave them in 2016 because I was getting ulcers because I felt like my reputation was being affected by continuing to be associated with them. Even though I ate what was still a decent chunk of income, it was no longer a third, it was a tenth. Okay. And I was able to replace that within 6 months. So diversify your revenue streams as much as possible because you never know when you're going to run into something that either slows down and goes away or you go, I don't really want to work in that place anymore, right?
Right.
Right. Let me lead that into agents. Is there a magic formula with the number of agents, where they're located? What works best for today's voice actor?
More.
More.
It's like how much money is enough? More, right? So here, that's a flippant answer, but at the end of the day, with talent agents, I think the trick is building up. There are different levels of talent agencies. You've got small markets, you've got regionals, you've got major coastal union shops, right? And the trick is to build relationships with as many of them as possible, to try and get representation in as many markets as you can. Yes, you will get some crossover of jobs coming in from different agencies. The idea there then is, of course, if you have a major mother agency, you give them priority. The second level is that if you're getting the same audition from 6 different regionals, which does happen, you give priority to the one that books you the most, that you have the best relationship with, and or whoever sends it to you first, right? But at the end of the day, the thing about talent agents is that the good ones, and there are some really small ones that are still really good ones, okay? The good ones all have proprietary jobs that you will not find anywhere else, that they're going and getting either in their local market or through their own connections, that you're not going to find on pay to play, that you're not going to find from other agents, that you're not going to find in other places, right? And the more of those that you can get, so it's not always the big national TV spots that pay the bills. It can be the local automotive, but you've got 10 dealerships, okay? It can be, the casino and gaming that are $150 to $500 a spot, but you're doing 30 a week. Okay. That kind of stuff. Sometimes it's the small market and regional agencies that have a lot of that. So I do like to collect them, and just have, I almost describe it as, after all these years having, without the pay, but almost a pay to play like experience, in the sense that in my inbox on a daily basis are 20 to 40 unique agency leads, that typically start at $1,000 and go up from there. Right. And I can cherry pick and decide which ones I'm going to do each day and which ones I'm not. And, have enough to sustain, based on my metrics and how frequently the percentage that I book with talent agents, consistent booking. So, the more the merrier. Obviously, you are going to be typically exclusive to each market with one agent. There are a few agents that want you to be regionally exclusive, but those are usually ones that are in regions where there's not a whole lot of competition. So that tends not to be such a big deal. Some of the bigger coastal union shops may want a little bit more say over who else you're with, and make sure that you get priority and that you do a coverage check with them on something before you do it with somebody else. And that's reasonable, especially if they're feeding you stuff that's in the, what you'll get from, a DPN or something like that. Your average audition from them is 5 figures as opposed to 4 figures coming from, a regional, or, 1,000 coming from a local, or even 750 coming from a local. So, you give whoever your mother agency is, you give that priority to.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Alden, you've been awfully quiet.
I have. I was wondering if my mic was on there. I was agreeing a lot.
Yeah. Surely you got a question or something here.
I'm taking it all in. I love it. And that was not the answer I was expecting on the agents. Because
it's one that I don't broadcast it. I mean, honestly, if you look at my website, I don't list all my agents on there, and it's part of it's because I don't really want them to know how many I have. But at the end of the day, I'm diligent about being as responsive to them all as possible and feeding them all, as much as I can audition wise, to where I'm valuable to them. Okay.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. Once you get an agent is how do you keep the agent, right? And you keep them by sending good auditions in and giving them a chance to book you. I've got agents that I haven't booked with in 2 or 3 years, but
Right.
they're still happy with me because I'm feeding them auditions, right? They just, for whatever
Right.
reason, they haven't been able
Right.
to land me, and then I've got others I book with, monthly or even once every couple of weeks. So as long as you're giving them stuff that they keep listening to and go, okay, this is a viable audition, as long as you're playing. The biggest complaint I get from agents about other talent is they don't submit enough. Okay. I was having this conversation with one of my agents last night. She's got somebody she's thinking of dropping. And the reason is that they don't submit enough. Why is this person not, and look, they're not stupid. She's like, I know who else this person has. Okay, so why is this person not submitting regularly to me? I don't understand, right?
Makes
Right,
sense.
right.
So submit regularly, you'll keep them happy.
Makes
Do you
sense.
make it a point to talk to your agents, because you just said, I talked to my agent the other night, so is that something that you would suggest to people, how often, if so I have 4 agents, should I be checking in with them once a quarter or maybe twice a year?
It's a little bit of a different answer for me because I'm a conference owner, a coach,
Sure.
a demo producer,
Sure,
and all those
sure.
things, right? So I have a job. It's part of my job in those other capacities is to maintain consistent conversations with agents and casting directors and managers, so that I know what they're looking for, so that I know where trends are moving, so that I just have kind of a 360-degree overview of the marketplace. For
Right.
an individual talent, yes, you should have some contact with your agent. I would have a little check-in, once every 3 to 6 months or so. Just,
Okay.
hey, how it's going? Anything I could be doing better? Anything you'd like to talk about? Once every 6 months is probably fine. Don't be in their ear every 2 weeks.
No, yeah, right.
They'll get
Yeah.
unless you're whining and dining them and you're booking all the time. Then they're happy to talk to you regularly. But don't annoy them. But yeah, a little check-in. They like to know that you're engaged and you're interested. So a little check-in every 3 to 6 to 12 months is reasonable.
Honestly, I had never thought
Makes
about
sense.
that. I mean, I've obviously had conversations with them, but it's mostly them instigating the conversation, and it's typically about something real
Yeah.
small. But
And send them a
That's
thank you. I'm a Christmas gift guy,
Yeah.
holiday gift guy, little gift basket, little something, it doesn't have to be huge, $50, whatever.
Sure.
But just, hey, thanks for all you do. Thanks for all the opportunities.
great
Great idea.
advice.
Great
Yeah.
idea.
I
Like
I
want
know
to.
we talked. Go ahead, Alden.
Well,
Well-
my question I had was, we talked about the big group of 200,000 people consider themselves voiceover actors,
Right.
and yet there's smaller group actually making a living, and even smaller group getting most of the work. And there's people coming in all the time. The three of us have been in VO for 3-4 years at most. What do you see? Because I'm sure you see a lot of people come into voiceover and then just drop off. They give up, they quit. What is the secret sauce that they're missing that they don't endure and stay in long enough to actually build a career?
It's being a business person.
Just being the
It's that
business
simple.
person
Being a
side of
small
things.
business person. I
Yeah.
have worked with talent, and people who've coached me have heard me say this line, but I've worked with talent who I consider to be C plus. Mediocre, not horrible, but mediocre, decent, passable, who are making $500,000 a year because they work like dogs. Okay. I've
Mhm.
also worked with talent who have more talent in their pinky finger than I have in my whole body, who have never gotten off the launch pad. And it's often because I talk to them 18 months later and go, how many auditions did you do this month? How many marketing touches did you do this month? And they say 10. And I know people who do 10 in an hour. So if you're doing 10 in a month, I can't help you, right?
Right,
Nobody can
right.
help you. The talent is a prerequisite. Technical ability is a prerequisite.
Yep.
But then it's the separator is who are you as an entrepreneur? Who are you as a hustler? I am very blessed to be in a position now in my career where I don't have to chase as much as I once did. But you know what? Yesterday, my day started at I woke up at about 5:30. My first session was at 8 o'clock. My last session was at 9 p.m. And in the middle of the week, that is still not an unusual thing for me. And I'm still banging out auditions in between. My ass is still on fire. Okay. I have a just terrifying, paralyzing fear of being poor. And so because I came from people think I've had money my whole life. I haven't. I came from a lower middle class background. When I was a kid, I got yelled at for ordering a pizza because it it was too expensive. Okay. So I've had the paralyzing fear of not having enough money. I saw my dad get fired from a corporate job and have to work the counter at Macy's over Christmas just to pay the rent. So I don't come from, a gilded background. For that reason, it's just for me, I'm still out there hitting, I'm still out there hustling it. I don't have to anymore. I can't rest on my laurels, right? But I could do less. But I don't. And, the talent who have that ass on fire drive are the ones who usually do the best. I'd say the one little exception to that would be I've seen a handful of people over the years who come in and they just have the right sound at the right time, and they work with the right people, and they get picked up by the right rep, and all of a sudden they're making deep 6 or 7 figures.
Yeah,
and it's just
right.
because they hit it at the right moment, and then they get into that pipeline of being taken care of. But that can go away too. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
there were, there's one, I won't throw a name out there, but there's one person I know, they wound up actually having to sell their house because they were pretty close to $1 million a year talent. But the vast majority of that was coming off of one job that was $400,000 a year contract for regular commercial work, another one that was $250 for regular promo work, and they lost them both in close succession. And the next thing you know, they couldn't afford their property tax.
Wow.
Okay. And so that's always good to me. If I was just relying on big time brick and mortar, which is nice, it's also scary because you don't have the level of control that you have when you've built your own business and you have all those different pipelines. So to me, that's the separator. It's who are you as a business person?
Awesome.
Yep.
Great
Yep.
answer.
That's great.
Great answer. With the people jumping in now as opposed to people jumping in X number of years ago, and we talked about that a little earlier, the difference in becoming business educated, in becoming industry educated, what should they expect on a timeline? If they're going to come in there and do this right, how long is it going to take to make any money? And then how long maybe to turn the corner?
It's a different answer for everybody. I think that there are talent who just really have it together, who have tons of natural ability, who immediately fall in with the right coaches and producers and get into the right pipeline. And I see some of them booking regularly within 6 to 12 months, and making a living within, 18. So that is not maybe the most common outcome, but that is possible. There are other people it takes a handful of years to really get that traction. I think for most people coming into the business, a reasonable benchmark would be where are you in 3 years? Okay, if you've and again, that assumes that you're doing things the right way. That assumes that you're making the necessary investment in good coaching, that you're getting demos, that you're putting a website together, that you're going out there and doing the marketing and doing the thing, right? So if from the moment you start going full bore to the 3-year mark, if you haven't started to turn the corner at that point, then the question starts to come in as to why. And, that's something then you need to start talking to maybe people you haven't worked with, not just the coaches and producers you've worked with, maybe get some different ears on you, get some different opinions. One place where I get into trouble with other people who sell shit to talent is I do talk a lot about if you've been doing this for 5 or 10 years and you've been going after it and you're still spending more money than you make, even if you're booking with some frequency, maybe find a new hobby. I as a conference owner and coach and demo producer, I probably shouldn't say this, but what I hate seeing out there are the people that I call perpetual students, who it's good to keep training. Okay. But I'm talking about the people you see at every conference, every workshop, every webinar, everything. And I've seen them there for 12 years. Okay. And they might book from time to time, but they're spending more than they're making. Okay. Why are you still here? If you love it and you just want to be around it and you don't care, great. And there are people like that who just kind of get caught up in the social side and they love the business and they just want to be a part of it. But if you're online complaining about why you're not booking, and you've been doing it for that, somebody should have told you at that point, hey, go do something else with your time and money. right? And I think there's still so many people out there who want to sell the dream to everybody because it lines their own pockets, that you do run into those people who just get into that vicious circle of spending more than they're making. So look, I mean, if you're not getting some kind of results after 3 years of putting in effort to this, you need to start asking some hard questions.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. I know we run into that in the group a lot. We got a lot of people who it seems like week after week after week after week, they're saying, I did this. What do I do next? And I did this. I had one yesterday say, can you tell me how to mount my mic in my car to record my car? And I'm like, what the hell for? Why are you going to record you haven't booked a job yet. Why do you want to do it? And I never answer that way, but that's the first thought in my head. And you come back and you nicely say, well, if you have a 416, slide it into the headrest and sit in the back seat and try to be.
It's like the people who go, I haven't booked any work yet. What should I do with my new U87, and how can I train for Pro Tools? It's like,
oh boy,
what cart horse.
Tough stuff.
Yes,
tough stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
Ask the other two guys real quick. You guys have anything else? If not, I know this guy's busy.
I won't keep it very long at all. But I follow you on Instagram and I see your adventures all the time. I mean, like anytime you're traveling, classic pilot pick. I love it. But I also
Anna can't stay. She's like, take the fucking Snapchat away from me.
Of course.
Disarm.
But another thing I love is just seeing all the different types of food you get to eat. Obviously, you're known for the lobster, but you're also known for fine dining. In fact, when I was at One Voice, Shaquana Bell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she went to your Euro retreat, at least the last one, and I think she has plans to go to the next one. We were sitting, because we all come from Paul Schmidt's group, so we were having a dinner that night, and we asked her about how was the Euro treat, and she said she loved it, and she was like, it was the first time I got to experience fine dining, and this is her quote, I had never experienced anything like that. In fact, the only thing I knew about fine dining was what I saw on SpongeBob, and we were dying, man. First of all, she's hilarious and super talented, but yeah, I thought that was great. But what got you into like eating like these great meals I see you eat? Like, I mean, I'm always just curious, man.
Because I'm a glutton. What do you think?
I mean, like fine dining. I mean, like it's like when you see fine dining, it's like portions are smaller, So
you know what's funny is actually I think that I had the good fortune of being a little bit of a multicultural kid in the sense that my family has a strong French background too, in addition to being American. Mm-hmm. Then that's my long story short. My grandfather was a lieutenant commander in the Navy who was stationed in Villefranche-sur-Mer in the south of France after World War II. Met a little French girl, married her, and the rest is history. And so we all have that French part of our heritage too. And so there was always, my father would cook, line caught fresh trout with almonds and mousseline when we would eat that sometimes when we were 7 or 8 years old, right? Even when we didn't have a lot of money, he'd go find that stuff and he'd cook it up himself, and it'd be really good. So, and he also worked in the hotel industry, so there were weekends, even though again he wasn't getting paid a whole lot, but there were weekends we'd get to go stay at the Meridian Hotel in Boston, which back then was a really nice hotel, on a comp rate for the weekend, right?
Wow.
And get to go have their little brunch with everything else. So I was lucky to be exposed to some of that from an early age. And then I think that, as my career progressed and I could afford it, we started seeking out. My wife and I like watching MasterChef, particularly the UK edition, which they don't try and stab each other in the back quite as much. They're more collaborative. But we got into that show, and then we started going to some of those restaurants and starting to experience, especially living in, halftime in Europe, experiencing more of that over there. And it's just become a bit of a passion, and I think now we're at a point, we've done so much of it that we seek out more unique experiences. Our favorite restaurant in the world is not some big 3 Michelin star fancy over the top place. It does have a Michelin star, but it's in Dusseldorf. It's a chef named Volker de Krosch that we've been dining with now for about 12 years. We found him when he was the head chef at a different restaurant in Dusseldorf. He is just a master of creating fascinating flavor profiles and dishes. It's a gastro bar. It's not white linen tablecloths, right? But it's just the most interesting assemblage of quality ingredients that we've ever found. We think he's the best cook we've ever eaten with. So we just like finding stuff like that now that's a little off the beaten path, because we've done so much of the, of the stuff that you see in the magazines and on TV.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Man. Thank you for
Awesome.
sharing that. That's great.
That's great.
Yeah, and I know there are people who become haters. We've dealt with one, but there are other people who look at this and they go, "Why is he always posting that? Why is he?" And I've never looked at it that way. I love to see people succeed. I loved hearing your background, and the thing that hit home is when you when you made the statement about you shouldn't have ordered that pizza, we couldn't afford it.
Right. Well,
And
yeah, I mean, I always tell people that, Anna and I have a rule that we don't post possessions. Sure. Okay. We don't post cars, I take pictures of the deer at the new house sometimes because I love the deer, but we're not taking pictures of the chandeliers or look at our fancy house or whatever else. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. It's not about objects. We post the things we love, and fine dining is part of that. Nice travel is part of that. But you know what? Going to the football game. I'm going to the Caps game tonight. I'm going to post pictures from the Caps game. Okay. Yeah. What am I going to eat at the Caps game? A hot dog and cheese fries. Okay. Right. Right. And we post the things that we love to do, and these are our passions. And honestly, we post them not so much to share them with people, but because we have this great social media bank that keeps our memories for us, and we can go back and see these things that we love doing. Yeah. So, it's never about showing off. It's about, these are our passions. These are the things we love to do. These are the people we love to be with. And, you're never going to see us post a picture of a car or a diamond or or even our hotel room. It's more of these, it's experiences. And I think if you can't, if you can't live your life enjoying the fruits of your labor and finding experiences that make you happy, we work to live. We don't live to work. And, that's what keeps us sane.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Seeing all that stuff, it definitely doesn't come off like showing off. I thoroughly enjoy it, and it's fun to see. And again, like, you go on a lot of cool adventures, experiences, and it's just fun to see what's out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we won't hold you up any longer. We're pushing on 45 minutes. And first off, we want to wish you, Anna and Tom, a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Hope you enjoy it. This will be aired after Thanksgiving, but we just want to get that in there. Thank you for spending time with us.
This is like 5 pounds less than I'll be on.
Yeah, you and I both. But we do want to wish you a great holiday. Look forward to seeing you in Atlanta and in Dallas. And if you're ever in Nashville, stop, give a yell.
Come to Nashville with some frequency. So we'll see my assistants there. Yeah.
Drinks are on me, for sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks, everybody out there, for watching, and hope to see you around.
All right. Thanks so much.
Contents of another VO podcast may cause drowsiness, itchy forehead, burning armpits, or headache. Some less known side effects include mashed toes, sore egos, irritable bowel, or just an old-fashioned case of red ass. Opinions given are not fact but opinion, and names have been changed to protect the 3 idiots who record this podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of It's Another VO Podcast. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. You can also email us your questions to anothervopodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at Another VO Podcast. See you next time.